A millionaire found three triplets crying at the door of his mansion. As he approached, the millionaire was shocked to see that the three triplets looked exactly like him. The scorching midday sun punished the asphalt as three identical boys positioned themselves strategically at the busiest traffic light on the main avenue. Jack, the tallest of the three by just 2 centimeters, held a faded red bucket full of water, his deep brown eyes always alert to the signal, like a falcon ready to strike. His small hands, calloused by early labor, firmly gripped the tattered cloth he used to clean the windshields of the cars that stopped there. The only thing he carried besides his work tools was a small rusty metal box, carefully kept in the torn pocket of his pants. As he watched the heavy traffic, he whispered to himself, "I have to get more money today. Daniel is not well at all. Sometimes I look at that old photo and wonder if that man could really be our father, if he could help us now." Liam, positioned on the other side of the traffic light, was the most agile of the triplets. His quick and precise movements made up for his slightly shorter stature, and his black hair, slightly longer than his brother's, danced in the wind as he dodged between cars. His clothes, though worn and patched, maintained an almost obsessive neatness, each patch carefully aligned, reflecting his methodical nature that manifested itself even in the smallest details. As he sprayed water on yet another windshield, he muttered through clenched teeth, "If we get a few more coins today, maybe we can buy something for the pain. Daniel is getting paler every day, and that scares me more than sleeping on the streets." In the middle of his two brothers, Daniel leaned discreetly against a pole, trying to disguise the weariness that consumed him. He was the most sensitive of the three, with a sweet smile that rarely left his lips, even on the hardest days. His eyes, identical to his brother's, carried a precocious sadness that betrayed his debilitated state. His hands trembled slightly as he held his own bucket, emptier than his brother's, and a new wave of pain shot through his chest, making him whisper, "I can't show how much it hurts. Jack can't sleep anymore, worried about me, and Liam pretends not to worry, but I see his eyes fill with tears when I get sick." The traffic light turned red again, and the three moved in a well-known choreography. Jack ran to the first car in line, a black sedan with closed windows. His agile hands worked automatically while his eyes never left Daniel, who was moving slower and slower. Between sprays, his trembling voice escaped. "The only thing we have is each other and that mysterious photo. If something happens to Daniel, how will I keep our promise to always stay together?" Liam approached Daniel stealthily, pretending he needed to get more water from his brother's bucket. With a skill acquired on the streets, he divided his attention between the stopping cars and his brother's condition, always ready to intervene if necessary. His watchful eyes didn't miss a single one of Daniel's movements, and his heart raced every time he noticed the signs of pain the triplet tried to hide. While pretending to focus only on his work, he whispered, "You don't have to pretend you're okay all the time. We're triplets. I feel your pain as if it were my own, and it's killing me to see you suffer in silence." The day dragged on slowly, and the relentless sun punished the three little workers even more. Daniel, growing paler, tried to keep up with his brothers, but his legs visibly trembled with the effort. Jack and Liam took turns discreetly, covering the area assigned to their brother without drivers noticing. An old man in an old car rolled down his window, offering a few coins directly to Daniel, who responded in a weak voice, "Thank you, sir. You know, sometimes I think the kindness we receive moves us much more than the money." The afternoon was beginning to fall when Jack noticed that Daniel was leaning more than standing against the pole. His face had completely lost color, and the hand holding the bucket was visibly shaking. With a worried look, he called Liam, and the two approached their brother. The stomachs of all three rumbled, betraying that they hadn't eaten anything since morning. Weakness was visible on Daniel's face as he could barely keep his eyes open. Jack held his brother's arm while whispering, "We need to get you something to eat, Daniel. You're getting weaker every day and it's killing me inside." The traffic at the light gradually decreased, but the three brothers remained at their posts, each fighting their own silent battle. Jack counted the coins in his pocket discreetly, his face tense as he realized they had barely enough for a piece of bread. His eyes never left his sick brother for a second, while a bitter thought escaped his lips. How will we survive another night? How will I manage to keep him alive without food, without medicine, without anything? Liam had almost completely taken over Daniel's territory, his movements now more hurried, trying to make up for his brother's absence. Sweat trickled down his face as he juggled between cars, his voice already hoarse from trying so hard to attract the driver's attention. Between one cleaning and the next, he muttered to himself, "Maybe we'll find a church open today, a warm place for him to sleep. I can't stand seeing my brother shivering with cold every night on the cardboard." A cold wind began to blow, announcing the arrival of night, and Daniel felt another sharp jab in his chest, stronger than the previous ones. His legs weakened, and he had to hold onto the pole more tightly to avoid falling. The bucket in his hands was practically untouched, betraying his inability to work that day. His stomach ached with hunger, mingling with the chest pain that wouldn't go away. With a voice interrupted by pain, he whispered, "I'm so hungry that even the chest pain seems smaller. I wish I could work like you, but my strength is running out." Jack noticed the change in Daniel's breathing, and abandoning the car he was cleaning, ran to him. His eyes, usually so determined, now overflowed with concern at the sight of his brother's condition. He touched Daniel's forehead, feeling the heat of the fever setting in, while his own stomach protested with hunger. His voice, usually firm, trembled as he said, "The night will be very cold today. We need to find a covered place, even if it's under some awning. You can't sleep in the open again." With the last ray of sunset on the horizon, Liam quickly gathered his work tools and joined his brothers. The three embraced discreetly, trying to share the little warmth they had, seeking comfort in each other. The most agile of the triplets searched his pockets, finding only a few crumbs from the morning's bread, offering them to Daniel with a choked voice. "It's little, I know, but it's all we have. Eat slowly to make it last. Tomorrow I promise to get more." The three began their daily search for shelter, with Daniel in the middle being practically carried by his brothers. The biting night wind made all three shiver, their thin clothes offering little protection from the cold. Jack looked at every alley, every store entrance, searching for a safe place, while saying with a determined voice, "Maybe we can get into that abandoned building today. There are some cardboard boxes there that could serve as blankets." The trio stopped in front of a closed bakery, the smell of baking bread torturing their empty stomachs. Liam arranged some cardboard boxes on the ground, trying to create a barrier against the wind for Daniel, while Jack searched for food scraps in nearby trash cans. The weakest of the three lay down, shivering with cold and pain, his words coming out between sighs. "The smell of bread is making me dizzy with hunger. Will we be able to get something to eat early tomorrow?" As the night wore on, the twins took turns trying to keep Daniel warm. The cold was relentless, seeping through the cardboard soaked by the dew. Jack held his sick brother, trying to transfer his own warmth while speaking softly. "Hold on a little longer. When dawn comes, we'll try that bakery that sometimes donates old bread. I won't let you go hungry like this again." A flickering lamp above them cast eerie shadows on the walls. Liam rummaged through the trash once more, hoping to find something, anything that could alleviate the hunger consuming them. At every sound on the dark street, the three huddled closer together, seeking protection. Daniel, between bouts of coughing, murmured, "I'm so tired of feeling cold, of feeling hungry. Sometimes I wonder if we'll ever have a real bed, a plate of hot food." The sound of footsteps on the sidewalk made Jack pull his brothers closer to the shadows. They had been kicked out of other places that week, and they couldn't risk losing this relatively protected piece of sidewalk. His voice was barely above a whisper when he said, "Sleep a little. I'll keep watch. Tomorrow I need you both to have strength to work, especially you, Daniel. We can't go another day without eating." The hours dragged on as the three fought against the cold and hunger. The noise of cars faded, leaving only the sound of the wind and empty stomachs breaking the silence of the night. Liam, hugging his brothers, tried to keep hope alive. When dawn comes, things will get better. They always get better when the sun rises. We'll get food, we'll find a better place. It has to get better. Daniel's thoughts were becoming confused by the rising fever. His body shivered uncontrollably, despite his brother's efforts to keep him warm. Between deliriums, his weak voice cut through the darkness. "I'm so cold, so hungry. Why doesn't anyone help us? Why do we have to sleep like this? I can't take it anymore, brothers, I can't take it anymore." The sun had not even risen when the three brothers were already at their usual spot at the traffic light. Daniel could barely stand after the night of almost no sleep, his body still trembling with fever and cold. The bucket in his hands weighed like lead, and every movement seemed to sap his last strength. Jack and Liam exchanged worried glances each time their brother staggered, but knew they couldn't stop him from working. With a voice broken by exhaustion, Daniel tried to reassure them. "Don't worry so much about me. If we work hard early today, maybe we can buy something to eat. Hunger is worse than pain." Traffic started to pick up with the beginning of rush hour. Jack positioned himself closer to Daniel, watching his brother's every move while cleaning windshields with automatic motions. Sweat ran down Daniel's forehead, even with the morning still cool, and his breathing became more and more irregular. Between one car and the next, Jack whispered to himself, trying to contain his growing panic. "He's not well, he's getting worse. How can I protect my brother if I can't even keep him fed? How can I save him if I don't even know what's wrong with him?" Liam juggled between his territory and Daniel's, realizing that his brother could barely raise his arm to clean the windows. The sun was starting to punish the asphalt when he noticed that Daniel was paler than usual, his hands shaking so much that he could hardly hold the cloth. Between one dash and another between the cars, his mind screamed in despair. He's going to collapse at any moment. Why doesn't anyone notice? Why doesn't anyone stop to help 3 children alone at the traffic light? The traffic light closed once again, and Daniel tried to move towards the first car in the line. His legs seemed made of gelatin, and the world began to spin around him. The voices of his brothers sounded distant, as if they were underwater. His heart was beating irregularly in his chest, and the pain, which was once constant, now turned into a piercing agony. With the last remnants of consciousness, he still tried to warn his brothers. "Jack, Liam, I can't. The air. I can't breathe." The bucket dropped first, spilling water onto the hot asphalt. Then, as if in slow motion, Daniel collapsed. Jack shouted his brother's name, dropping his own work tools and running towards him. Liam was already there, trying to support the fall, but Daniel's body violently hit the asphalt. The cars honked impatiently, while Jack held his brother's head in his lap, his voice choked with despair. "Wake up, Daniel. Please, open your eyes." "You can't leave us like this. We're 3. We've always been 3. A black car stopped abruptly beside them, ignoring the signal that had just opened. A middle-aged man jumped out of the vehicle, his face marked by concern as he saw the scene. Without hesitation, he approached the boys, quickly checking Daniel's vital signs. Liam, initially distrustful, stepped back a little, but the urgency of the situation spoke louder. The driver, with a firm but gentle voice, declared, "He needs a hospital immediately. Let me help. I can take you to the nearest emergency room." Jack and Liam looked at each other for a second, the fear of trusting strangers fighting against the despair of seeing their brother unconscious. Daniel's body was icy cold, despite the heat of the day, and his breathing almost imperceptible. With tears streaming down his dirty face, Jack made the decision. "We never get into strangers' cars, but if we don't do something now, we're going to lose our brother. Liam, we have no choice." The journey to the hospital seemed to last an eternity. The driver drove as fast as he could, while Jack kept Daniel in his arms in the back seat, Liam by his side, both trembling with fear and anxiety. The man tried to stay calm, but his voice betrayed his concern when he spoke through the rearview mirror. "We're almost there. Hang in there. You did the right thing accepting help. Sometimes we need to trust people." The emergency room doors opened violently when the medical team received Daniel. A stretcher quickly appeared, and the small unconscious body was taken from Jack's protective arms. Liam grabbed his older brother's hand, both paralyzed with fear as they saw Daniel being taken inside the hospital. The driver who had helped them remained by their side, his silent presence offering some comfort. Jack, with a trembling voice, murmured, "They won't let us stay with him. They'll find out we're street kids and they'll separate us." The hours dragged on in the waiting room as the twins huddled in a corner, trying to go unnoticed. The driver who had helped them had to leave, but before he did, he assured that the medical team would take good care of Daniel. With tears in their eyes, the brothers thanked him for his kindness in a world full of people who ignored them. Jack's eyes never left the door where his brother had disappeared, his heart racing every time someone in white walked by. Liam, sitting on the floor beside him, repeated like a mantra, "He's strong. He'll be fine. He has to be fine. We're 3. We've always been 3. We can't be just 2. A tired-faced nurse finally approached them, her eyes softening as she saw the state of abandonment of the children. Gently, she led them down a long and frighteningly white hallway, her soft voice trying to ease the gravity of the situation. "Your brother had a cardiac arrest, but we managed to stabilize him. He's very strong for such a small child. Now the doctors are running tests to understand exactly what happened." Jack squeezed Liam's hand so hard that his fingers were white as he tried to process the professional's words. "He had a heart attack, but he's just a kid like us. How can he have heart problems so young?" The doctor's room was small and cold, with a strong smell of disinfectant. The doctor, a grey-haired gentleman, looked at the papers on his desk with a grave expression. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with concern. "Your brother has a severe heart condition. We need to start treatment immediately, or he could." The doctor began to explain, but Jack interrupted him, his voice trembling. "He could die? Is that it? Our brother could die if he doesn't get the right medicine." Liam suddenly stood up, his small hands frantically searching the tattered pockets of his pants. Some coins tinkled as they fell to the floor, the result of all that morning's work. His eyes filled with tears as he gathered the coins, knowing it wouldn't be enough. With a choked voice, he confessed, "It's all we have, doctor. Please, it has to be enough for some medicine. Any medicine that can help our brother. Is there any medicine you can prescribe that can be paid with this money?" he asked, torn between hope and despair. The doctor looked at the coins on his desk, then at the desperate faces in front of him. With a heavy sigh, he began to explain the cost of treatment, each number being a stab in the twins' hearts. Jack felt the world crumbling around him as he heard values that seemed absurd for those who could barely scrape together money to eat. His words came out broken by sobs. "We'll work harder, doctor. We can clean more cars, we can work all night if we need to. We'll find a way to buy our brother's medicine." The final diagnosis came like a sentence. Without proper treatment, without the specific medicines, Daniel wouldn't survive for long. Jack felt the weight of the world on his 8-year-old shoulders, the overwhelming responsibility of keeping his brother alive without having the means to do so. His voice, usually strong and determined, was nothing more than a broken whisper. "How am I going to tell him that we can't buy the medicines? How am I going to explain that all our work isn't even enough to save his life?" Minutes later, with the medical prescription in hand, the three brothers left the hospital, Daniel leaning between Jack and Liam. The doctor had been clear. Without the medicines, his heart wouldn't last long. At the reception, a crumpled paper listed medications that cost more than they had ever seen in their lives. Daniel's faint voice broke the silence of the early morning. "You should let me go. Don't worry about me. Now, besides not being able to work, I'll also make you spend money we don't have on medicines," Daniel said, but Liam cut him off. "Don't say that. We will never let you die. We will always fight for you. We will fight for each other," he replied, with a determination that didn't match his tender age. Jack and Liam found a sheltered spot between two abandoned buildings where they improvised a bed with cardboard for Daniel. The sick brother was shivering, despite the heat that was already rising. Liam arranged some old newspapers to serve as a pillow, while Jack organized the day's plan. With a determined yet gentle voice, Jack held his brother's hand. "You'll stay here today, resting. We'll work double shifts at every possible traffic light until we get money for your medicine," he explained, while Liam adjusted the last newspaper under Daniel's head and got up, brushing the dust off his tattered pants. Before leaving, he leaned over his sick brother, his voice choked with concern. "Try to sleep, don't strain yourself to get up. Promise you'll stay quiet here until we get back. Promise you'll be breathing when we return," he asked, and Daniel nodded, pretending not to feel pain. The scorching sun punished the asphalt as Jack and Liam ran between traffic lights. Their bare feet burned on the hot ground, but neither dared to stop. At every red light, they attacked the cars like little warriors, vigorously and quickly wiping the windows. "If we clean 3 cars per light, maybe we'll get more money," Jack panted, running to the next vehicle. Liam nodded, sweat dripping down his dirty face. "We can rotate between 4 traffic lights. The ones on the main avenue always have more cars," Liam replied. Hours passed, and their arms already ached from the repetitive effort. But the image of Daniel shivering with fever prevented them from resting. The brothers dangerously crossed the streets between cars, taking advantage of every second the light was red. "My hands are raw," Liam murmured, observing the blisters forming. Jack continued wiping a windshield as he replied, "It doesn't matter the pain. If we don't get the money for the medicine, Daniel could." His voice faltered, unable to complete the sentence. Then, they both began to work even harder to raise money to buy the medicines. Noon arrived and they had barely managed to collect a quarter of the amount needed for a single medicine. Their stomachs growled with hunger, but every coin was religiously saved in their pockets. "There's that traffic light near the mall," Liam suggested, wiping the sweat from his eyes. Jack agreed, determined. "The cars there are more expensive. People should give more money. Let's try there after another hour here." The afternoon progressed and their movements began to slow down due to fatigue. The coins jingled in their pockets but were still insufficient. That's when Jack spotted an old construction, not far from where they had left Daniel. "Liam, look! That abandoned church seems safer than the cardboard." Liam stopped his work for a moment, observing the place. "Will we be able to take Daniel there? It seems far for someone so weak." The church was in ruins, but still offered a roof and walls that would protect them from the cold night. Jack examined every corner of the place, making sure it would be safe for their sick brother. "Here we can make a better bed for him, Liam. With these old benches, he won't have to sleep directly on the ground." Liam ran his hand over the ancient wood, responding with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "And there's even a confessional where we can store things. Finally, a temporary place." When they returned to get Daniel, they found their brother burning with fever. Curled up on the cardboard, his face was paler than ever, and his breathing sounded like a painful wheeze. Jack knelt beside him, trying to hide the panic in his voice. "We've found a better place, brother. An abandoned church. You'll be able to rest properly there." Daniel tried to get up, but his legs faltered. "I don't know if I can walk there. Everything is spinning, and my chest hurts so much I can barely breathe." He replied, but the brothers refused to let him give up. Liam and Jack carefully carried their brother to the church, each moan of pain from Daniel a stab in their hearts. The journey, which would normally take minutes, took almost an hour. When they finally arrived, Jack tried to sound excited. "Look, there's even a padded bench for you to lie down. It'll be much better than the cardboard." Daniel smiled weakly, his voice no more than a whisper. "You're always taking care of me. I wish I could reciprocate. I wish I wasn't a burden," he said. The money they managed to get that day was barely enough to buy food, let alone medicine. Liam counted and recounted the coins as if they could magically multiply. Jack placed a damp cloth on Daniel's forehead, watching his brother shiver with fever. "Tomorrow we'll try other traffic lights, those near the luxury buildings." Liam agreed, putting away the few coins. "They say the cars are more expensive there. Maybe the people will be more generous." "It has to be. Daniel can't wait much longer." The night in the church was scary, with shadows dancing on the walls through the broken stained glass windows. Jack kept Daniel warm with pieces of old curtains they found, while Liam tried to make his sick brother drink some water. The silence was broken only by Daniel's labored breathing. The early morning hours grew cold when Daniel began to thrash violently on the improvised bench, serving as a bed. His body, drenched in cold sweat, trembled uncontrollably as he unsuccessfully tried to draw air into his lungs. Jack, who was dozing off sitting on the floor next to his brother, woke up startled by the abrupt movements. "Jack, I can't breathe," Daniel gasped, his nails scratching his own chest. His older brother jumped up, alarmed, shouting, "Liam, wake up! Daniel is having another crisis!" Liam sprang up, running to his brother's side. Daniel's hands were icy cold, his lips already taking on a frightening bluish hue. Panic gripped the twins as they tried to remember the doctor's instructions for crisis moments. "Try to sit up, Daniel. Breathe slowly like we practiced," Liam pleaded, helping his brother sit upright. Daniel tried to respond but could only emit a distressed moan. "It's tightening. Too much." The minutes dragged on as the brothers watched, powerless, Daniel struggling to breathe. Jack held his hand tightly, feeling every tremor that ran through his brother's body. "We need to do something," he muttered, desperate. Liam frantically searched his pockets for the money they had saved. "Maybe there's a pharmacy on duty. There must be some cheaper medicine that can help." The despair in Daniel's eyes made Liam run out of the church, clutching the coins in the pocket of his torn pants. The night was dark and frightening, but the fear of losing his brother was greater than any other. His little legs ran as fast as they could down the deserted streets, while his choked voice murmured, There has to be an open pharmacy that sells cheap medicine. There has to be someone who can help. The cutting wind of dawn seemed to mock his despair, bringing the distant echo of Daniel's anguished cough. In the church, Jack tried to keep Daniel conscious. His sick brother alternated between moments of lucidity and delirium, his breathing increasingly shallow and difficult. "Stay with me, please," Jack begged, holding his brother's feverish face in his hands. Daniel opened his eyes for a moment, tears streaming down. "I'm scared, Jack, very scared. I don't want to die like this. I don't want to leave you alone," the boy replied with a choked sob. Liam finally found a pharmacy, the dim neon sign blinking at the end of the street. His hands trembled as he spilled the coins on the counter, his eyes begging the night clerk. "Please, I need any medicine that will help my brother breathe. He's very ill. He was diagnosed with a heart problem, but we can't afford an expensive medicine. Please, sir, help us." The man examined the scattered coins, his face hardening as he counted the insufficient amount. "This doesn't even pay half of the cheapest medicine, boy." Liam's heart sank as he realized they had gathered much less than they thought. The coins seemed to laugh at him on the pharmacy counter as he pleaded, "Please, sir, my brother could die. I promise we'll come back tomorrow with the rest." The clerk shook his head, inflexible. "I'm sorry, but I can't. Store rules, no exceptions." On his way back to the church, Liam tripped on a stone, scattering several coins on the dark street. His hands scratched the asphalt desperately, trying to recover the money they had taken days to save. The despair in his voice echoed through the empty night. "No, no, no, it was all we had." Tears blurred his vision as he crawled on the ground, searching for the lost coins in the darkness. How will I tell Jack that I lost part of the money? How will I explain it to Daniel? When Liam finally returned to the church, he found Jack embracing Daniel, who had passed out after the crisis. The sick brother's face was even paler, almost translucent in the dim light that came through the broken stained glass windows. "I didn't get the medicine," Liam sobbed, showing the few coins that were left. Jack looked at the money, then at Daniel, his voice trembling. "And we still lost part of what we had. How are we going to save him now?" he asked, but his brother had no answer to his question. The merciless dawn advanced as the twins watched over their brother's restless sleep. Daniel's chest rose and fell with difficulty, each breath seeming to cost more effort than the one before. Jack held his icy hand, his eyes fixed on his pain-contorted face. "He won't last another night like this, Liam. We need to do something different." Liam wiped the tears with his dirty sleeve, responding with determination. "I saw the big houses when I was looking for the pharmacy. Maybe someone there can help us." The first ray of sun found the three brothers still awake, Daniel now semi-conscious after the night's crisis. Jack began to gather their few belongings, his mind already plotting a desperate plan. "I heard that in the rich part of the city there's a big hospital. Maybe there they'll help us even without money." Daniel coughed weakly from the bench, his voice no more than a whisper. "But it's so far. I don't know if I can walk all the way there." Liam organized the few coins that were left, carefully storing them in the least torn pocket of his pants. His eyes burned with fatigue, but his voice carried a steely determination. "We'll carry you if we need to, Daniel. We can't wait for help to come to us anymore." Jack agreed, helping his sick brother to sit up. "Better to die trying than stay here watching you suffer more and more." The faint morning light illuminated Daniel's haggard face as Jack and Liam improvised a sort of stretcher with the cleanest pieces of the church's old curtains. The twins' hearts tightened with every groan of pain from their brother, who could barely keep his eyes open. "If we cross through the center, we'll reach the rich part in a few hours," Jack explained, trying to sound more confident than he really was. Daniel gripped his brother's hand with surprising strength. "And if no one wants to help? And if they send us away again?" Liam finished tying the ends of the curtain, testing the worn fabric's resistance. His little hands trembled with exhaustion, but his eyes shone with renewed determination. The fear from the night before still echoed in his voice. "I won't let anyone send us away this time. You saw how you were last night, Daniel. It was different from the other crises." Jack agreed, helping to position his brother on the improvised stretcher. "This time we'll beg for a job. We'll get on our knees if we have to. Someone has to listen to us." The exit from the church was more difficult than they imagined. Each abrupt movement drew a groan of pain from Daniel, making his brothers stop every few steps. The sun was starting to warm up, punishing the three exhausted bodies. Is it hurting a lot? Liam asked, adjusting the curtain to protect his brother's face. Daniel tried to smile, but a new wave of pain made him clench his teeth. Not as much as it hurts to see you killing yourselves to carry me. Leave me here, please. I'm just giving you trouble. I'm a burden. Jack stopped abruptly, his hands tightening around the ends of the curtain that served as a stretcher. His eyes, usually so gentle, stared at Daniel with a mixture of anger and fear. Stop talking about leaving you. There's no such possibility, understood? Either we all go together or nobody goes. Liam carefully set the stretcher down, his voice choked with emotion. We're triplets, did you forget? If you die, a part of us dies too. So stop asking us to abandon you, he said, before moving on. The morning progressed as they dragged themselves through the streets, each block seeming like an eternity. The city center was starting to awaken, and the hurried people diverted around the three boys without even looking at them. Look how the buildings are becoming different, Liam observed, noticing the changes in architecture. Jack nodded, stopping to rest his arms. The streets are cleaner too. This must be where the big houses you mentioned start. The sky suddenly darkened, turning the afternoon into a premature night. Jack and Liam barely had time to seek shelter when the first big drops began to fall, quickly soaking the curtain that served as a stretcher for Daniel. The old fabric became even heavier with water, further impeding the exhausted twins' walk. The rain will worsen his condition, Jack shouted over the noise of the storm. Daniel was shivering violently, his weak voice almost lost in the storm. It's so cold, so cold. The wide, tree-lined streets of the wealthy area were completely deserted under the torrential rain. The three boys looked like small, drenched ghosts, dragging themselves between the imposing mansions that stood behind ornate gates. Liam tried to protect Daniel with his own body, but it was useless. They were all completely soaked. Look at the size of these houses, he whispered, his teeth chattering with cold. Jack nodded, water dripping down his face. There has to be someone here who can help. There has to be. A particularly loud clap of thunder made Daniel shrink even further into the improvised stretcher. His clothes were clinging to his thin body, and his lips had taken on a frightening bluish hue. The twins' legs were shaking with exhaustion, but they refused to stop. I can't feel my legs anymore, Daniel murmured, his eyes half closed. Liam adjusted the weight of the stretcher, replying with a trembling voice, Hold on just a little longer, please, just a little longer. At the end of the most elegant street, one mansion stood out from the rest. Its golden gates and immense gardens seemed out of a distant dream, so different from the reality the three brothers knew. Jack stopped abruptly, his eyes fixed on the imposing structure. It's the biggest house I've ever seen in my life, he whispered, the rain still punishing their small bodies. Daniel opened his eyes for a moment, his voice almost inaudible. It looks like a castle, like in the stories we made up to fall asleep. Liam helped to lean the improvised stretcher against the mansion's wall, seeking minimal protection under the small protrusion of the gate. The twins' hands were raw from carrying their brother's weight for so long, but the fear of losing him was greater than any physical pain. Let's try here, Jack decided, his voice trembling as much as his body. Daniel tried to get up, but his legs gave way immediately. I can't stand up. A lightning bolt illuminated the scene for a second. 3 identical boys, drenched and shivering, one of them almost unconscious in the arms of the others. Jack tried to reach the doorbell, but it was too high for his size. Liam then knelt down, offering his back as support. Climb on me. If you can ring the bell, someone has to hear. Jack hesitated, looking at Daniel. But what if he falls while I climb up? The sick brother managed to muster a weak smile. Go. I can hold on. A little longer. At that moment, the mansion's lights turned on, and a tall silhouette appeared through the glass of the main door. The twins froze, their sudden fear competing with the despair that had brought them there. The figure approached the gate with determined steps, protected by a black umbrella. Jack squeezed Liam's hand, whispering, It's our last chance. If he doesn't help. Liam completed, his voice choked. We can't lose Daniel. We can't. The approaching man was tall and imposing, dressed in clothes that certainly cost more than everything the boys had ever seen in their lives. His face had striking features and piercing eyes that visibly widened when he saw the 3 children. It was William, the mansion's owner, and something in his expression changed completely when the gate's light illuminated the identical faces of the triplets. His deep voice cut through the sound of the rain. "My God, it can't be." William invited them in and helped lay Daniel on the mansion's elegant sofa, his eyes widening in astonishment as he observed the three boys' features under the bright hall light. The man seemed hypnotized, as if he were seeing a ghost of his own past multiplied by 3. "It's remarkable," he murmured, his voice trembling. "You're identical, but it's impossible. How can you look so much like me?" Jack and Liam exchanged meaningful and suspicious glances, their drenched clothes forming puddles on the marble floor. With trembling hands, Jack took a rusty metal box from his pocket, protected from the rain inside his shirt. "Sir," his voice came hesitant as he opened the box. "Is this, sir, you? This is the only thing we have from our past." He extended an old photograph protected by a transparent plastic. "They say this man could be our father." William took the photo with trembling hands. His face lost all color as he recognized the image. It was himself, 12 years younger, standing in front of that same mansion. The photo had been taken by an ex-girlfriend. He remembered the moment perfectly. His eyes traveled from the photo to the boys' faces, comprehension hitting him like a lightning bolt. "This photo. It's me," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "But how? Where did you—" The sound of heels on the marble floor announced someone's arrival, making the twins instinctively shrink back. William was still holding the photo with a trembling hand when he stood up, his face a mask of shock and determination. "Laura, call Dr. Carter immediately. It's an emergency." His voice faltered as he completed, "And Laura, these boys, they gave me a photo. I need to understand what's going on, but they could be my sons." The woman who had just entered stopped abruptly upon seeing the scene. 3 identical drenched boys, one of them clearly very sick, and her husband holding an old photograph with trembling hands. "William, you can't be serious," she began, but he interrupted her, extending the photo. "Look at the date on the photo, Laura. Look at them. They have my eyes, my face, and this photo. It could just be a coincidence, but I need to know what's happening." The twins watched the exchange in silence, while Daniel moaned softly on the sofa. "Jack, Liam, everything's spinning again." Laura's face contorted into an expression of disdain as she examined the drenched, dirty boys soiling her imported rug. Her eyes flashed with anger as she turned to William. "You can't be considering this. It's obvious it's a scam. These street kids probably stole that photo from somewhere. I'm calling security right now." Jack instinctively positioned himself in front of Daniel while Liam grabbed the sick brother's hand. "Laura, don't you dare!" William's voice thundered through the hall, making his wife take a step back. But she didn't give up, her face red with indignation. "Look at them, William. Dirty, ragged, probably full of diseases. And now they show up with a photo of you. It's clearly an extortion attempt. How much do you want?" She turned to the boys, her voice dripping with venom. "Is that what someone told you to do, huh? Use this ridiculous story to try and blackmail us?" Liam trembled at the accusation, but his voice came out firm, though low. "We just want help for our brother. That photo is the only thing we have. We didn't even know it was here. That our father could be here." He was interrupted by a violent coughing fit from Daniel, which made William instinctively move towards the boy. Laura grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his skin. "Don't go near them. I'm calling the police right now." "Stop." William disentangled himself from his wife with a brusque movement. "Look at him, Laura. This boy is dying. He has my eyes, my face, even the same mark I have on my chin. And you want me to let him die at my doorstep because of your prejudice?" His voice trembled with a contained rage that made Laura take another step back. "I'm going to help them, whether you like it or not. And if there's the slightest possibility that they are my children." "Have you gone mad?" Laura practically screamed, her shrill voice echoing through the hall. "First you let those street boys into our house, and now you suggest they might be your chill." She was interrupted by the sound of something heavy falling. Daniel had slipped off the couch, his small body convulsing violently on the marble floor. "Daniel!" The twins' desperate scream cut through the air as William rushed towards the boy. Daniel's lips were purple, his cold body trembling uncontrollably. Jack held his brother's head, tears streaming down his face. "Please, no! Not now that we've found help." Liam clung to Daniel's hand, sobbing, "Wake up, brother, please wake up." William lifted the boy from the floor with surprising gentleness, his own eyes watering as he felt the frail body in his arms. His voice came out like thunder when he turned to Laura. "Call Dr. Carter now, tell him it's a matter of life and death." When she hesitated, he added with icy fury, "If this boy dies because of your prejudice, Laura, I swear I'll never forgive you." Laura picked up the phone with trembling hands, her face a mask of barely contained hatred. As she dialed, she cast a venomous look at the twins. "You'll regret coming into this house, no matter what William thinks. I won't let 3 street boys destroy everything we've built." But her threat was cut off by the doctor's urgent voice on the line, and she had to swallow her anger to deliver the message. William was already climbing the stairs with Daniel in his arms, the twins close on his heels, leaving a trail of water on the imported carpet. His voice was gentle when he spoke to the boys, contrasting with the tone he'd used with his wife. "He'll be all right, I promise. Dr. Carter is the best doctor in town." Jack and Liam exchanged hopeful glances, while Laura finished the call with a furious expression of defeat on her delicate face. Dr. Carter arrived within minutes, his imposing figure striding through the drenched hall with quick, precise steps. He didn't even seem to notice Laura standing in the corner, her face still contorted in a mask of hatred, or the 2 identical boys who followed him like shadows up the stairs. His experienced eyes were already fixed on Daniel, analyzing every detail of the unconscious boy on the bed. After a quick assessment, his deep voice cut through the tense silence. "He has minutes, maybe. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. The situation is more serious than I imagined when you described it on the phone," the doctor explained. Jack and Liam clutched each other's hands, their knuckles white from gripping so tightly, as they watched the doctor work. The man moved with an urgency that made their hearts clench even more. When the doctor opened his bag and began preparing an injection, Liam couldn't stifle a frightened sob. His heart must be very weak, just like the other time in the hospital, Jack said, his voice trembling. "But this time he looks even worse. I've never seen our brother so cold, so lifeless." William remained by the bedside, his face a mask of concern as he watched the doctor work. When Dr. Carter mentioned the need for expensive tests and specific treatments, he didn't even blink. "Do whatever is necessary, doctor. Cost is no issue. Save this boy at any price," said the millionaire, making the doctor glance up for a moment, his expression somber. "Mr. William, I need you to understand the gravity. Even with all resources, the chances are minimal. His heart is practically stopping," he said, as he called for the emergency to come and pick up the boy. Shortly after, the ambulance arrived with its sirens off, as if already knowing it was too late to hurry. The paramedics moved with a silent efficiency that seemed even more frightening than the usual rush. Jack couldn't take his eyes off Daniel's face, now covered by an oxygen mask that looked too big for his small features. "Why are they so quiet, Liam? Why isn't anyone running?" Liam squeezed his brother's hand tighter. Maybe it's because there's nowhere left to run," the brother said, tears in his eyes. The drive to the hospital was a blur of lights and shadows. William insisted on taking the twins in his own car, following the ambulance closely. The silence inside the vehicle was broken only by the boys' occasional sobs and the sound of the rain that continued to fall. "He's strong," Jack muttered, more to himself than to the others. "He's always been the strongest of the 3 of us." He continued, but Liam did not respond, his eyes fixed on the ambulance's taillights that seemed to be taking not only his brother, but a part of their own lives. At the hospital, Daniel was immediately taken to an emergency room, leaving a cold void in the hallway where the twins and William awaited. The hours dragged on like decades, each minute without news weighing like lead on their hearts. "Why is it taking so long?" Liam whispered, his small voice echoing in the empty hallway. Jack, leaning against the cold wall, answered in a voice that didn't seem his own. "Maybe they're performing a miracle. It has to be that." Dr. Carter returned when the sun was already starting to rise, his tired features carrying the weight of news no one wanted to hear. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he approached the group. William stood up immediately, his tense posture betraying that he already knew what was coming. "Doctor, please, tell me you made it," William pleaded. However, the doctor looked at the hopeful faces of the twins before answering, his voice heavy with professional sadness. "We did everything possible, but his heart..." Before he could finish the sentence, a piercing alarm cut through the air, and a team of doctors ran to the room where Daniel was. Jack and Liam jumped up, their small bodies trembling at the same frequency as the heart monitor that now emitted a continuous and terrifying sound. Dr. Carter ran to the room, leaving behind a sentence that froze everyone's blood. "He's going into full cardiac arrest. I don't know if we'll be able to bring him back this time." William held the twins by their shoulders as they tried to run after the doctor, his own broken heart seeing the despair on their faces, so similar to his own. Jack struggled in his arms, screaming, "No! Let us go! He needs us!" Liam had collapsed on the floor, his words coming between sobs. "We promised to always stay together, always three, never two. Please don't let him break that promise," the boy pleaded as the doctor rushed to attend to the patient. Time seemed to have stopped in the hospital hallway, each second marked only by the twins' sobs and the distant sound of medical orders being shouted through the closed door. William kept the boys close, feeling their small bodies tremble with a pain no child should know. When Dr. Carter finally emerged from the room, his face was pale and defeated. His eyes scanned the anxious faces waiting for him in the hallway before speaking. "We managed to stabilize him, but the situation is still extremely delicate. Daniel has a rare congenital heart disease, the same type that..." He hesitated for a moment, looking meaningfully at William. "The same type you had as a child, Mr. William. An extremely rare hereditary condition," he said. After Dr. Carter finished explaining the rare heart condition, William voiced his suspicion that the boys might be his sons, his voice carrying significant weight. "We need to do a DNA test immediately. This condition is hereditary, and if there is indeed a relationship, we can better understand how to treat," said the doctor, and William nodded quickly while the twins looked at each other apprehensively. Minutes later, a nurse approached to collect samples for the tests. Jack held Liam's hand tightly when the nurse brought the swab to test the twins' DNA. "It's just a swipe inside the mouth. It doesn't hurt at all," she said in a caring voice, collecting the samples and leaving shortly after, promising that the doctor would return with the results as soon as possible. The following hours were a torture of waiting. The hospital laboratory, responding to William's urgent request, processed the samples with top priority. Liam was dozing on Jack's shoulder, exhausted after so many emotions, when the doctor returned with an envelope in his hands. His face had an expression that mixed astonishment and confirmation. "The results leave no doubt, Mr. William." William stumbled as he read the paper, needing to lean against the hallway wall. His hands trembled as he held the result that would change everyone's lives forever. "You have 99.9% probability," his voice came choked as he handed the document to the doctor. "They are really my sons," said the doctor. Jack and Liam, now fully awake, watched the scene with a mixture of fear and hope. So the picture our mother left, was really of our father. Our mother told the truth. The name of their mother escaped Liam's lips as a painful whisper, making Jack squeeze his hand tighter. William approached the boys, kneeling to be at their eye level. "Tell me everything that happened, please," William asked, emotional about discovering his sons. Liam swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "She never said much about the past. She only said that our father was a good man, that one day we would understand why she kept that picture," Jack added, tears streaming down his face. "She died when we were 3 years old, an illness she could never get properly treated. We were too young to know her. We only know her name, Helena." The twins sat on the small waiting room couch, their exhausted bodies finally yielding to the weight of events. Jack held the little box with the photo, his fingers unconsciously caressing the rusty metal as he began to speak. "After she died, we stayed with the neighbor from the next apartment. At first he seemed nice, said he would take care of us as if we were his own children." Liam visibly shuddered upon hearing this, his voice coming out bitter. But it was a lie. He just wanted to mistreat us. He received a benefit for taking care of us, so he didn't want us to leave. William leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the boys, capturing every expression of pain on their young faces. Liam continued, his voice trembling. "He would lock us in the basement when social worker visits arrived. He said if we told anyone, he would separate us, send each one to a different place. He hurt us a lot. Jack hugged his brother by the shoulders, completing with a choked voice. We endured for a long time. We had to endure, right? We were too young to run away. William's expression darkened with every word from the boys, his hands involuntarily clenching into fists. One day, Jack continued, his voice faltering, he drank more than usual. He was so angry that... Liam interrupted, his words coming out between sobs. He tried to throw Daniel down the stairs, said he was one less to worry about. That's when we ran away. We were very small, but we knew that if we stayed there, we might not survive. The silence that followed was lead-heavy. William had tears in his eyes when he finally managed to speak. How old were you? Jack wiped his face with the sleeve of his still damp shirt. 5 years old. We just took the box with the photo Mom left and ran away in the middle of the night. We never went back. Liam added, his gaze lost in painful memories. No one ever looked for us. Not him, not anyone. The photo was our only hope, Liam continued, his small voice echoing in the empty waiting room. Sometimes, when the hunger was too strong or when Daniel started getting sick, we would look at it and imagine what it would be like to have a father. Jack carefully took the photo out of the box, the years of handling evident in the worn edges. Mom wrote on the back of the photograph, so you never forget where you came from. But we didn't know what that meant. William took the photo with trembling hands, turning it over to see the delicate calligraphy on the back. His face paled as he recognized the image. Helena, he whispered, the name coming out like a painful prayer. Your mother and I had a brief relationship during the summer. I never saw her again. I didn't know she was expecting you, let alone that you needed me so badly. I failed you. The twins exchanged surprised and teary-eyed glances. I looked for her for months, but she had completely disappeared after the summer. I thought she didn't want me, that what we had was just fleeting for her. Jack squeezed Liam's hand tightly. We never knew anything about her. The neighbor who stayed with us refused to tell us. We only knew about the photo and that she was a special woman, because a neighbor said so, but she didn't know her well enough to know more about our mother. Dr. Carter approached during the whole account, clearing his throat softly. Mr. William, we need to discuss Daniel's treatment. His heart condition is exactly the same as yours, and considering the history of deprivation, it won't be easy to treat him, said the doctor, his voice faltering as he saw the watery eyes of the twins. Liam spoke up, his voice trembling. We tried to get the medicine, doctor. We worked so hard, but it was never enough. Never again, William declared firmly, getting up suddenly. You will never go hungry or cold again. You will never have to choose between food and medicine. He knelt in front of the boys, his eyes so identical to theirs, overflowing with contained tears. I can't change the past. I can't bring Helena back or erase those years of suffering. But I promise by what is most sacred that I will make up for every day you spent alone. You mean you? You really want to stay with us? Jack asked, his voice trembling with hope and fear. His small hands still clutched the box tightly, as if afraid it was all just a dream. Liam watched the scene in silence, tears streaming down his dirty face as he murmured, We just wanted to save Daniel. We didn't imagine we would find... His voice failed, unable to pronounce the word father. Dr. Carter alternated between the files in his hands and the identical faces before him. The next few days will be crucial for Daniel. The disease is the same one you had, Mr. William, but in his case. The doctor hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Years of malnutrition and lack of basic care have made the condition much more severe. His heart is extremely compromised. But you managed to get cured, didn't you? Liam asked anxiously, his eyes shining with hope. If it's the same disease, then Daniel can get better too, can't he? He asked. William swallowed hard, remembering his own battle against the disease as a child. I had all the resources, all the necessary treatment from the first symptom. If I had known. If Helena had told me she was pregnant, I would have stayed with you, I would have intervened. His voice failed, laden with guilt. Jack suddenly got up, his eyes burning with unshed tears. It wasn't your fault. Sometimes fate chooses difficult paths for us, but in the end... Liam completed, his voice choked. In the end, everything would be all right. We looked at that photo every day before going to sleep. I guess we never stopped believing that one day we would find each other. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of the machines keeping Daniel alive. William looked at the photo once more, his fingers tracing the message written by Helena. "You're right," he finally said, his voice firm despite the tears. "Everything will work out now. I'll do everything in my power to save your brother, and then—" He took a deep breath, looking into the hopeful eyes of the twins. "Then we'll be the family you should have always had." Hours later, the pediatric ICU was a labyrinth of machines and tubes, all connected to Daniel's frail body. Jack and Liam refused to leave his bedside, their eyes fixed on every movement of their brother, on every oscillation of the heart monitor. When the nurse suggested they go rest, Liam vehemently shook his head. "We won't leave him alone ever again. What if he wakes up and doesn't find us?" Jack held his sick brother's cold hand, completing, "We promise to always stay together. We won't break that promise now." William observed the scene from the door, his heart torn between concern for Daniel and admiration for the twins' loyalty. In a few hours, medical teams were coming and going from the room, adjusting medications, checking vital signs. Dr. Carter patiently explained each procedure. "His heart is very weak, but we're doing everything possible. Every minute he endures is a victory." The twins absorbed every word, every detail of the treatment, as if understanding could help their brother improve. The night hours dragged on as William alternated between phone calls to specialists and moments sitting with his sons. He brought blankets and pillows from the car, improvising beds in the uncomfortable ICU chairs. "You need to rest a little," he gently insisted. Liam curled up under the blanket, his eyes never leaving Daniel's pale face. "Only if you promise to stay here too. We've never had anyone to take care of us before." "I'm not going anywhere," William promised, pulling his chair closer to the boys. The rhythmic sound of the heart monitors was like a macabre lullaby, reminding everyone of the fragility of Daniel's life. Jack fought against sleep, his eyelids heavy as he murmured, "If we fall asleep, promise you'll wake us up if he gets worse." William ran his hand through his son's hair, a gesture he never imagined doing. "I promise." "I won't take my eyes off him for a second." Dawn brought a subtle improvement in Daniel's vital signs. Dr. Carter examined the results of the latest tests with a less tense expression. "The medication is starting to take effect. If he continues like this, maybe we can." Liam jumped up from the chair, anxiously interrupting. "He's going to be okay. He'll be able to come home with us?" the boy asked. The doctor hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "The treatment will be long and he'll need constant care. We'll do everything we can so he can eventually go home." 3 days passed without the twins leaving the hospital. Their clothes had been replaced by new ones that William had bought, but the fatigue on their faces was evident. Daniel had briefly woken up a few times, always looking for his brothers with frightened eyes. "We're here," Jack would whisper every time, squeezing his hand. Liam would add, his voice choked, "And we'll never leave your side again." On the 4th morning, Dr. Carter called William aside for a private conversation. The twins watched apprehensively as the two moved away, fearing bad news. When he returned, William had a determined expression. "The doctor thinks you need to rest properly. Daniel will continue to be cared for, and I have a suggestion." He knelt in front of his sons, his voice gentle. "How about getting to know your new room? We can come back to the hospital as soon as you wake up." Liam grabbed Jack's hand, panic evident on his face. "But what if he needs us? What if he wakes up alone?" Liam asked. His brother, though equally reluctant, noticed the fatigue in his eyes. Maybe we can rest for a little while. Just a few hours." William smiled, relieved. "I promise we'll be back soon. And if anything changes, the hospital will call me immediately." The mansion seemed even more imposing in the daylight. Jack and Liam entered hesitantly, their small steps echoing in the marble hall. The fatigue of days without proper sleep weighed on their shoulders, but their eyes scanned every detail of the place that was now supposedly their home. "This is the biggest house I've ever seen," Liam whispered, instinctively holding his brother's hand. Jack nodded, his voice equally low. "Do you think we'll really be able to stay here? It seems too unreal." William guided them upstairs, down a corridor with several doors. He stopped in front of one of them, his hand hesitating on the doorknob for a moment. "I had this room prepared for the 3 of you, when Daniel gets better." His voice faltered for an instant before continuing. "When he gets better, his bed will be waiting for him here. the millionaire said, opening the door to reveal a spacious room with 3 beds, the walls a soft shade of blue. The twins froze at the entrance, their eyes wide as they scanned the space. There were new clothes folded on each bed, toys they had only seen in store windows, and a huge window overlooking the garden. Liam took a hesitant step inside. "We've never had real beds before," Jack added, his voice trembling. "Or new clothes like this. Are you sure we can keep all this?" he asked, his eyes alternating between humility and hope. The moment was brutally interrupted by the sound of heels in the hallway. Laura appeared at the door, her face contorted in a mask of fury upon seeing the boys in the room. "So, this is it? You're really going to bring these street kids into our home?" she asked accusingly. William instinctively placed himself between her and his sons. "Laura, we've already talked on the phone. Please don't start. I told you they're my sons and this is their place." The twins shrank back against the farthest wall, the familiar fear of angry adults returning in full force. Laura advanced into the room, her finger pointed at William. "You're throwing away 15 years of marriage because of 3 boys who came out of nowhere. You don't even know for sure if they're really yours." Liam clutched Jack's hand tightly, whispering, "She's going to make us leave, just like everyone else did." William met his wife's furious gaze, his voice dangerously calm. "The DNA test confirmed it, Laura. And even if it hadn't, just look at them. They're my sons, and they're staying here." Laura took a step back, her face red with anger. "Then choose now, William. Either them or me. I'm not going to share my home with 3 street kids," she demanded, incisive. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack and Liam held their breath, their hearts pounding painfully in their chests. William looked at his sons, then at his wife, his decision clear in every word. "Then you'd better start packing your bags, Laura, because they're not going anywhere. They're my sons, my blood, and they've already lost too much time without a father," said the determined millionaire. The argument between William and Laura echoed through the mansion's hallways when Jack discreetly nudged Liam, his eyes shining with a painful decision. The two waited until the adults left the room, absorbed in their heated discussion, before grabbing their old dirty clothes hidden under the bed. "We only bring trouble," Jack whispered, carefully folding the new clothes he had been given. Liam nodded, silent tears streaming down his face. "He'll end up losing everything because of us. We're already making him spend so much money on Daniel," the boy whispered. With the precision of those who spent years going unnoticed, the twins quietly descended the stairs. The hall was empty, and the front door was unlocked. Before leaving, Liam took one last look at the staircase leading to the room that almost became theirs. "Will Daniel understand why we did this?" Jack held his brother's hand tightly. "He will. We've always done everything to protect our family. And now we need to protect our father too. We can't ruin his life." The city seemed different from the perspective of those who had seen the comfort of a soft bed. Their feet, once again barefoot, remembered the way to the stoplight where they used to work. Jack grabbed an abandoned bucket near a closed shop, while Liam found some old rags. "If we work day and night, maybe we can at least pay for the medicines." His voice trembled as he completed. "We can't let our father spend his entire fortune on us. We're bringing too many problems into his life, but we need the doctor to keep taking care of Daniel. So we'll do whatever we can to pay for everything for our father." The sun had barely risen when the first cars began to stop at the stoplight. Jack and Liam returned to their old routine as if they had never left it, their automatic movements cleaning windshield after windshield. "How much does each day in the hospital cost?" Liam asked, counting the few coins they had managed to collect. Jack shook his head, his voice choked. "More than we could gather in an entire year, but we need to try to pay so we don't cause more problems." At the mansion, William woke up in panic when he found the boys' room empty. The new clothes were carefully folded on the beds, as if they had never been worn. His heart raced as he saw a crumpled piece of paper on the floor, an attempt at a note written in a shaky, childish handwriting. "Sorry for causing so much trouble. We didn't want to cause you problems. We'll try to pay for Daniel's hospital. It was very special to have met you, Daddy." William read, his voice coming out in a desperate scream. "My God, they ran away. My sons ran away." Despair took over William as he drove through the city streets, his eyes scanning every corner, every alley. Guilt consumed him from the inside. How didn't I realize? They were scared by the fight, by everything. Poor kids. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white. What kind of father am I that I can't even keep my children safe for one night? At the stoplight, Jack and Liam continued their mechanical work, their small bodies moving between cars like in the old days. A lady offered bread, which they politely refused. They couldn't waste time eating. Every second was precious to raise money. "Do you think Daniel has woken up yet?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. Jack swallowed a sob. "I hope not. We need to finish the job before he wakes up. We have to stay together." The minutes turned into hours and the sun was already high when a familiar car came to an abrupt stop at the traffic light. William jumped out of the vehicle before even turning off the engine, his eyes red from crying at the sight of his sons. "Jack! Liam!" His voice came choked, years of repressed love overflowing in every word. The twins froze in place, buckets and rags dropping from their trembling hands. "Dad, we don't want to cause you any trouble. Why did you run away?" William's voice trembled as he approached his sons, his steps hesitant as if fearing they might disappear again. Jack and Liam remained paralyzed, water from the bucket soaking their bare feet. "The hospital is too expensive," Liam finally whispered, tears streaming down his dirty face. "We overheard the doctors talking about the cost of medicines," Jack added, his voice choked up. "And Mrs. Laura, she'll leave because of us. We don't want to ruin your life. We're giving you too much trouble. We don't want to be a burden to you." William dropped to his knees on the hot asphalt, not caring about his expensive suit getting dirty. His hands were trembling when he reached out towards his sons. "You're not ruining my life. You are my life. I spent 8 years without knowing you existed, without being able to protect you, without—" His voice failed, tears now freely running down his face. "Without being able to hug you, without being able to be a father. Don't take this away from me again, please." Liam was the first to move, his small body taking a hesitant step towards his father. "But what if Daniel doesn't get better?" His voice came out broken, years of fear and responsibility weighing on every word. "What if the treatment is too expensive?" Jack stepped closer too, his eyes fixed on his father's. "We've always taken care of each other. We don't know what it's like to have someone taking care of us." "Let me be your father," William pleaded, his arms still outstretched. "Let me make up for every night you went to bed hungry, every time you were sick without anyone to take care of you, every moment you had to be adults when you should have just been children." His voice carried such deep pain that it made the twins stop breathing for a moment. "You are my sons, my little warriors. Please, give me the chance to protect you now. I won't let anything be lacking for you. Daniel will get the treatment. I'll pay for everything. I'll take care of you with all my love. You are my sons. Everything that is mine is yours." It was as if a dam had burst. Jack and Liam ran at the same time into their father's arms, their small bodies colliding with such force that they almost knocked him over. For the first time in their lives, they allowed themselves to be just scared children needing comfort. William held them tightly, as if that embrace could erase years of abandonment and loneliness. "Never again," he murmured through tears, feeling his sons' bodies tremble against his. "Never again will you need to run or hide. Never again will you have to choose between food and medicine. Never again will you be alone." The journey back to the mansion had been silent, the three of them still processing the intense moment they had shared at the traffic light. But as soon as they entered the house, Jack and Liam ran to change their clothes. "We need to go back to the hospital," said Jack, his hands trembling as he put on a clean shirt. "Daniel must be scared without us there," he said, and Liam was already at the bedroom door, anxious. "What if he woke up and didn't find us? He always gets nervous when he doesn't see us." In the car, William watched his restless sons in the rearview mirror. At every red light, their anxiety visibly increased. "I called the hospital. They're taking care of your brother. His condition is still critical, but they're doing everything they can." When they arrived at the hospital, the twins practically jumped out of the car before William had even fully parked. They ran through the familiar corridors to Daniel's room, their hearts racing with fear and guilt. Dr. Carter found them at the door, his face serious when he saw the anguished expression on the boys' faces. "He asked for you several times. The surgery is scheduled for an hour from now." Jack held Liam's hand tightly. "Can we see him before?" "Please?" Daniel was awake, his pale face lighting up when he saw his brothers enter the room. "You disappeared." His voice came out weak. but there was a note of relief in it. Liam ran to hug him gently, being careful with the tubes and wires. "We'll never disappear again, I promise. We were being silly." Jack joined the hug, whispering, "And we'll stay here until you're out of surgery. We won't leave you alone for a minute." The nurses began preparing Daniel for surgery, disconnecting some monitors and adjusting others. The twins watched every movement with attentive eyes, memorizing every detail as if their own lives depended on it. "I don't want to go alone," Daniel murmured, his voice trembling as they started moving his bed. Jack held his hand tightly. "We'll go as far as they let us, and then we'll wait right at the door until you come back." The hallway seemed endless as they accompanied the stretcher. Liam held her brother's other hand, trying to smile despite her fear. "Remember when you were afraid to sleep in the dark? We always told stories until you fell asleep." Daniel tried to smile, but his lips were trembling. "Tell me a story now. I'll remember it until I fall asleep from the anesthesia." Dr. Carter, who was walking beside them, nodded gently. "You can keep talking until we reach the door to the surgical center," he said, as the brothers whispered a short story. The double doors of the surgical center looked huge and daunting when they finally arrived. It was the moment of separation. Jack and Liam leaned over their brother at the same time, their eyes already welling up. "We'll be here when you wake up," Jack promised, his voice choked. Liam added, trying to sound confident. "And when you come out, you'll have a new and strong heart. You won't feel any more pain," said the boy. William watched the scene a few steps behind, his own heart tightening at the sight of the deep connection between the triplets. Dr. Carter touched his shoulder lightly. "We need to take him now. The surgery is long and every minute is important." The father approached the stretcher, kissing Daniel's forehead. "Be strong, son. Your brothers and I will be waiting for you." Daniel squeezed his father's hand for the first time. "Take care of them for me?" "They pretend to be strong, but they're also scared," said the boy. The twins watched paralyzed as the doors of the surgical center closed, taking Daniel away. The metallic sound echoed down the hallway like a sentence, and Jack felt his knees weaken. "I can't breathe properly, Liam. What if it's the last time we see him?" Liam slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold floor, pulling his brother with him. "Don't say that. He's strong. He's always been the strongest of the three. It has to work out." The first 2 hours of surgery passed in an agonizing silence, broken only by the sound of the medical team's footsteps coming and going. William had brought water and snacks that remained untouched beside the boys. Suddenly, the movement through the doors began to change. Nurses rushed in carrying blood bags and equipment. Jack gripped Liam's arm tightly. "Why are they running? What's happening to our brother?" A nurse rushed out, her face tense as she spoke something on the phone about complications and needs urgently. Liam tried to get up to ask what was going on, but his legs were shaking so much he could barely stand. "Why won't anyone tell us anything?" His voice came out choked, panic growing in his chest. Jack hugged his brother tightly. "They're busy saving Daniel. That has to be it. It can't be anything else." Dr. Carter briefly appeared at the door, his face covered by the surgical mask, but his eyes revealed an intense concern. Before the twins could ask anything, he had already disappeared back inside the room. More doctors came running, and the sound of beeping machines could be heard through the doors. "Dad!" Jack called, his voice small and scared. "Why is there so much noise in there?" William, who was as terrified as his sons, couldn't answer. The frantic movement continued for another hour. Every time the doors opened, the twins held their breath, waiting for news that never came. The hallway had turned into a nightmare of waiting and uncertainty, where every second seemed to last an eternity. Liam had started praying softly, something they had learned on cold nights. "Please don't take our brother. Please let him stay with us." Dr. Carter finally emerged from the surgical center after 7 hours of surgery, his face revealing the weariness of a difficult battle. Jack and Liam jumped up, their legs numb from sitting for so long. The doctor slowly removed his surgical mask, choosing his words carefully. "The surgery was more complicated than we expected. His heart is much more damaged than the scans showed." Liam gripped Jack's hand tightly. "But he's going to be okay, right? Please tell us our brother will be okay." The doctor led the family to a private room, the sound of their footsteps echoing down the silent hallway. William kept his hands on the twins' shoulders, feeling their small bodies tremble with anxiety. "The problem," Dr. Carter began, sitting across from them, is that his body is very weak. We need to do a blood transfusion immediately, but even that—" His voice faltered for a moment before continuing. "Even that may not be enough. There's a possibility that we may need to perform another procedure, a much more delicate one." Jack stepped forward before the doctor even finished speaking. "You can take my blood, all of it, if you need to," he said, full of courage, while Liam immediately joined his brother. "Mine too. We've always taken care of Daniel. We're not going to stop now." Dr. Carter observed the determination on their identical faces, so young and already so marked by life. "You are both very brave, but I need you to understand one thing. Even with the transfusion, there is a possibility that we may need something more, something that carries much greater risks." William felt his heart tighten at the doctor's grave expression. His hands gripped his son's shoulders instinctively as he asked, "What kind of risks, doctor? What else might be needed?" The father asked, making the doctor sigh deeply, his eyes revealing a concern that went beyond the professional. "For now, we'll try the transfusion, but I want you to be prepared. We may need to make some very difficult decisions in the coming days." The twins were taken to have the necessary tests for donation, their faces tense but determined. The nurse tried to distract them as she collected the samples for blood typing, but they could only think of Daniel. "Will it hurt a lot to donate blood?" Liam asked, watching the needle apprehensively. Jack squeezed his hand tightly. "It doesn't matter if it hurts. Daniel has already endured much worse alone. Now it's our turn to help." Dr. Carter analyzed the test results with an increasingly worried expression. The twins were compatible, as expected in identical triplets, but there was something in his gaze that alerted William that more revelations were to come. "Their blood is perfect for the transfusion," the doctor began, hesitating before continuing. "But I need to be honest. The damage to Daniel's heart is too extensive. At some point we're going to need a more definitive solution." The transfusion room was silent, except for the rhythmic sound of the machines. Jack and Liam were lying on stretchers side by side, watching their blood flow through the tubes. William alternated his gaze between his two blood-donating sons and the window overlooking the room where Daniel was. "You are the bravest boys I've ever met," he said, his voice choked with pride and concern. Liam tried to smile despite his fear. "We'll do anything for Daniel. It's always been like that since we were little," explained the twin. A nurse rushed into the room, whispering something into Dr. Carter's ear. The doctor nodded gravely before turning to William. "His heart is responding to the transfusion, but not as we expected. Mr. William, we need to talk. In private." The twins exchanged apprehensive looks, recognizing that tone of voice. It was the same one doctors used when the news was too bad to be said in front of children. "If it's about Daniel, we want to know too," protested Jack, trying to sit up despite the dizziness. "Lie down." William gently pushed Jack back onto the stretcher, his heart tightening at seeing the determination in his son's eyes. Dr. Carter observed the interaction, his expression softening for a moment. "You're right. You're a family now. You need to hear this together." The doctor pulled up a chair, sitting between the two stretchers. "What I'm going to say is difficult, and it will require an even more difficult decision from all of you." Liam tried to turn to see the doctor better, the transfusion tubes limiting his movements. His small hands gripped the stretcher sheet tightly. "Is it about that other procedure you mentioned? The more dangerous one?" Jack completed, his voice trembling slightly. "We'll do anything, doctor. Anything to save our brother," he said. Dr. Carter exchanged a meaningful look with William before answering, "Yes, but it's not that simple. The procedure Daniel may need involves risks you can't even imagine." William shifted restlessly in his chair, his mind processing the implications of what the doctor was saying. He had just found his sons, and now faced the possibility of losing not just one, but perhaps. His thoughts were interrupted by Liam's determined voice. "You don't understand, doctor. We lived on the streets, went hungry, felt the cold. Nothing can be worse than seeing Daniel suffering without being able to help." Jack nodded vigorously. "Before we only had each other. Now we have a father. We have a chance to stay together." Dr. Carter slowly stood up, checking the twins' vital signs as he continued. "For now, let's hope the transfusion is enough. But I want you to know." He paused, looking directly at William. "The love I see between you, this willingness to sacrifice for one another, is something rare. It will be this unity that will give Daniel the strength to fight. William couldn't hold back the tears as he replied, 8 years lost, Doctor. I won't lose another minute with my sons. Dr. Carter entered the room with a discreet smile on his lips, something they hadn't seen since the beginning of all this. His eyes scanned the heart monitors before turning to the anxious family. The transfusion worked better than we expected. His vitals are stabilizing, and his heart. He paused, observing the numbers on the monitors. His heart is responding in a way I didn't think was possible, said the doctor. William fell to his knees beside Daniel's bed, his hands trembling as he held his son's small hand. My strong boy. My warrior boy. Minutes later, Jack and Liam, still weak from the blood donation, approached their brother's bed unsteadily. Daniel's face had a color they hadn't seen in a long time, and his breathing seemed stronger, more regular. Look, Jack, Liam whispered, pointing to the monitor. His heart is beating stronger. Jack couldn't respond, tears silently streaming down his face as he watched the brother he loved so much fighting to come back to them. William began to cry along with his sons, emotion taking over his face. It was at this moment that Laura appeared at the room's door, stopping abruptly at the sight before her. In 15 years of marriage, she had never seen William cry, not even on their wedding day. But there he was on his knees, tears freely running down his face as he kissed his sick son's hand. The twins instinctively shrank back at seeing her, but something in her expression was different. William, Her voice failed her as she saw her husband so vulnerable, so completely surrendered to that paternal love she had tried to deny. Laura took a hesitant step into the room, her high heels making no sound on the hospital floor. For the first time, she truly looked at the boys, not at their clothes, not at their origins, but at them. Jack guarded the left side of Daniel's bed, while Liam guarded the right, both still pale from the blood donation, but determined not to leave their brother's side. They donated blood. I heard some nurses saying it in the hallway, she asked, her voice coming out softer than anyone expected. William nodded, still holding Daniel's hand. Without a second thought, they said they would do anything for their brother. The silence that followed was broken by the soft sound of Daniel stirring in bed, his eyes struggling to open. Laura watched, fascinated, as the three identical faces, including her husband's, transformed with the same expression of hope. "Can you hear us, son?" William whispered, leaning over the bed. Jack and Liam moved even closer, their small hands reaching for their brothers. "We're here, Daniel. Everyone is here." Laura felt something inside her break as she witnessed that pure display of familial love. She approached the bed slowly, her eyes meeting William's. "I'm sorry," her voice trembled. "I'm sorry for not seeing it before, for not understanding." She turned to the twins, who watched her with a mixture of fear and surprise. "And I'm sorry to you boys. You didn't deserve my prejudice, not after everything you've been through." A faint moan from Daniel drew everyone's attention. His eyes slowly opened, confused and frightened by so many people around him. Laura, moved by an instinct she didn't know she possessed, grabbed a cup of water with a straw from the table. "I heard he just went through surgery. He must be thirsty." Jack and Liam watched, surprised, as she gently helped Daniel take a few sips. "Slowly, dear, just a little at a time." The affectionate words slipped from her lips naturally, making the twins exchange astonished looks. Where are my brothers?" Daniel's voice came out hoarse and weak. Before Jack and Liam could move closer, Laura was already adjusting the pillows, making it easier for him to see everyone in the room. "They're here. They haven't left your side for a minute. They were even very brave. They donated blood for you." Her voice carried a genuine admiration that made the twins blush. "In fact, I don't think I've ever seen such devotion between siblings." William watched the scene with silent tears streaming down his face, seeing his wife, always so formal and distant, lovingly tucking the blanket over Daniel, checking the temperature of his forehead with the back of her hand. "He's a little warm," Laura murmured, worried. Liam took a hesitant step towards her. "We always put a damp cloth on his forehead when he has a fever." To everyone's surprise, Laura smiled gently. "Then show me how you do it. I want to learn how to take care of him too." Jack brought a small basin with water the nurse had left, while Liam showed Laura how to fold the cloth the right way. "It can't be too wet, or it'll drip into his eyes," he explained, his voice still cautious but less tense. Laura followed the instructions carefully, her delicate hands copying the motions the boys had perfected over years of caring for their brother. "Like this?" she asked, gently placing the cloth on Daniel's forehead. Jack nodded, surprised by the change in the woman who had recently kicked them out of the house. "Yes, exactly like that." Laura spent the following hours learning every little detail about Daniel through his brothers. The twins, initially hesitant, began to share their experiences, how he liked to sleep with his head elevated, which side he preferred to lie on, how to hold his hand in a way that didn't bother the tubes. "He's always been the most sensitive of the three," Liam explained, adjusting the blanket for the 10th time. Laura listened attentively, her eyes revealing a growing understanding. "You know every detail about him. You cared for him like a real family." William watched the silent transformation that was happening before his eyes. Laura, who had always prided herself on her impeccable poise, was sitting on the edge of the bed, her expensive shoes forgotten in a corner as she helped change Daniel's dressings. "I don't think I've ever seen you like this," he commented softly. Laura paused for a moment, her hands still busy arranging the pillow. "I never allowed myself to be like this, William. I was so afraid of losing our perfect world that I didn't see the perfection that could exist in simply loving one another." Dr. Carter came in for the last check of the day, smiling at the unusual scene. Laura holding Daniel's hand while telling a story, the twins sitting close by, listening intently, and William watching his family finally complete. "His vitals are great," the doctor announced. "The recovery is happening faster than we expected." Jack couldn't hold back a relieved smile. "It's because he now has an entire family caring for him." When night fell, Laura surprised everyone once again. Instead of going home as she always did, she brought extra blankets and helped arrange the armchairs for the twins to sleep more comfortably. "Tomorrow I'll bring better pillows," she promised, tucking the blanket around Liam. "And maybe some pajamas too. You need to rest properly to take care of your brother." The boys exchanged surprised looks, but there was a glimmer of hope in their eyes. Maybe, just maybe, they had found not only a father, but a complete family. The last thing Daniel saw before falling asleep again was the image he had never imagined possible. His brothers sleeping peacefully in the armchairs, his father holding his hand, and Laura, the one who had once rejected them, lovingly tucking the blanket over each of them. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice still weak. Laura paused by his bedside, leaning in to gently kiss his forehead. "No, dear. Thank you. You taught me the true meaning of family." However, minutes later, the first alarm rang out, sharp and piercing, shattering the newly won peace. Jack woke with a start, his eyes immediately seeking his brother in the bed. Daniel was writhing, his hands clutching his chest as he struggled to breathe. "Liam, wake up!" Jack shouted, already running to his brother's side. The heart monitor flashed red, its numbers plummeting alarmingly. "No, no, no! Daniel, hang in there, please, hang in there." Dr. Carter burst into the room, followed by a team of nurses, their tense faces revealing the gravity of the situation. William and Laura, who had fallen asleep in the armchairs, were pushed aside as the doctors surrounded the bed. "Blood pressure dropping," one nurse announced. "Erratic heartbeat," another added. The doctor began shouting rapid orders, his hands already preparing a syringe. "We need to stabilize him now. The surgery didn't hold the way we expected." The twins watched, paralyzed, as more and more equipment was brought into the room. Daniel had stopped struggling, but his pallor was alarming, his lips taking on a bluish tint Jack and Liam knew all too well. "Why is this happening?" Liam sobbed, clinging to Jack's arm. He was getting better. He was okay. Laura wrapped her arms around the two of them, her own voice trembling. "The doctors will save him. They have to save him." The medical team worked frenetically for almost an hour, administering medications and adjusting equipment. Dr. Carter never took his eyes off the monitors, his brow creased with worry as he murmured orders to his team. When they finally managed to stabilize Daniel, the doctor turned to the family, his face bearing the weight of bad news. "The surgery we performed, it wasn't enough. His heart is failing faster than we anticipated." William felt his knees buckle. "But you said he was responding well, that he was getting better." "I need to be completely honest with you now." Dr. Carter led the family out of the room, leaving Daniel under the intensive care team's care. His voice was grave as he continued. What we saw over the past few days was a temporary improvement. His heart is much more damaged than the initial tests showed. The surgery only delayed the inevitable. Liam gripped Jack's hand tightly, his words coming out choked. "What does that mean, doctor? Please tell us there's a way to save our brother." The physician took a deep breath before continuing, his eyes meeting each family member's face. "There is a possibility, one single chance in fact, but it's an extremely risky procedure, something we rarely do in children." He paused as if weighing every word. "Daniel needs a partial heart transplant, but we don't have time to wait for a compatible donor. His heart won't last." Laura covered her mouth with her hands, stifling a sob. "And there's no other way? No other option?" Dr. Carter looked directly at the twins before answering, his voice laden with meaning. "In cases like this, when time is crucial and we need a perfect match sometimes we can use heart tissue from a close compatible relative." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of monitors in Daniel's room. William stepped forward, his voice shaking. "You're suggesting that one of my other children donate part of their own heart? There are enormous risks for both sides," continued Dr. Carter, his voice heavy with the responsibility of the situation. "The donor would undergo an extremely delicate surgery. We would be removing a vital part of their heart to save the brother. The chances of complications are—" He hesitated, seeing the terror in William and Laura's eyes, but proceeded. "They are significant for both. And even if everything goes well in the surgery, the recovery will be long and difficult for both," the doctor explained. Jack took a step forward, his small face marked by a frightening determination for someone so young. "How long does Daniel have without the surgery?" he asked, his voice determined. The doctor lowered his eyes to his exams, his voice almost a whisper. "Hours, maybe. His heart is failing rapidly. If we do nothing—" Liam completed the sentence, his voice choked. "We'll lose him. Like that night at the church, only this time there's no going back." "But doctor," Laura spoke up, her voice trembling, "how can we choose? How can we risk one life to save the other? How can we risk losing both in the surgery?" she asked as William hugged the twins protectively, as if he could hide them from this impossible decision. Dr. Carter continued, "The procedure has never been done on children so young. It would be experimental, risky. The donor would need to have extraordinary strength, both physical and emotional. And even then, the chances of success are—" Liam interrupted, his voice surprisingly firm. "What are the exact chances, doctor? We need to know." The doctor consulted his notes once more before answering, each word weighing like lead. 50% chance of success for both. If it works, both can recover completely. If it goes wrong—" his voice failed for a moment before continuing, "we could lose both on the operating table." Laura let out an anguished sob, while William seemed to have aged 10 years in just a few minutes. Jack and Liam, however, remained strangely calm, their eyes fixed on the door of the room where Daniel was fighting for survival. Dr. Carter observed the twins with a mixture of admiration and concern. Even if the donor survives the surgery, they will never be the same again. They will have physical limitations for the rest of their life, will not be able to exert themselves, will need constant medication. The doctor knelt in front of the boys, his voice gentle but firm. "You are too young to fully understand what this means. It's a decision that will change your lives forever," he said. Laura began to cry openly, her tears now different. No longer of anger or prejudice, but of a deep and maternal fear she didn't know she possessed. "We can't allow this, William. They're just children. They've been through so much. There must be another way." William hugged his wife, his own face marked by silent tears. "How will I choose between my children? How can I authorize a surgery that could—" His voice failed, unable to complete the terrible sentence. The silence was broken by the shrill sound of another alarm coming from Daniel's room. The medical team rushed again, and through the open door the twins saw their brother convulsing on the bed. "We don't have much time to decide," said Dr. Carter, rising quickly. "His heart is failing. If we're going to do something, it has to be now." Liam gripped Jack's hand, and the two exchanged a look that carried years of mutual understanding. "We don't need to decide anything," said Liam, his voice firm despite the tears. "It's already decided," Jack completed, stepping forward. "It's always been like this. We'll do anything for Daniel." The doctor looked at the parents, who remained embraced, paralyzed by the magnitude of the decision. We need the father's authorization, and we need to decide which of the two will be the donor. Laura sobbed louder. How will we choose? How can we condemn one of them to a limited life? The sound of the alarms grew more and more urgent, echoing through the hallway like a cruel reminder of the time running out. I'll do it. Liam's voice cut through the tense silence of the hallway, firm and clear despite the tears in his eyes. I've always been the strongest of the three. I've always lasted longer, without eating to give my share to Daniel. Liam said, and Jack grabbed his brother's arm, his eyes wide with fear. Liam, no, let me do this. You've always been better at taking care of him. But Liam shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. That's exactly why, Jack. If something goes wrong, you'll know how to take better care of him afterwards, the boy determined. William took a while to nod, but he knew that was the only chance to save all the brothers. The bond between them is too strong. They can't lose each other. I won't separate them. If this is the only chance to have all three together, then Liam will have the surgery, he decided. With that, Dr. Carter quickly led Liam to an examination room, while nurses prepared Daniel for surgery. The boy remained calm throughout the battery of tests, answering questions with a maturity that broke the hearts of the adults present. Will it hurt a lot? He asked as they collected another blood sample. The doctor hesitated before answering. Yes, Liam, it will hurt, but we'll give you strong medication to help. Are you sure you want to do this? The doctor asked, and the boy nodded in agreement without hesitation. He's my brother, of course I want to do this, he replied simply. William watched through the glass, his hands pressed against it as if he could cross it and stop all of this. Laura held his arm, both paralyzed by the courage of that boy who, until a few days ago, was just another street child. How can he be so strong? Laura whispered, her voice choked. How can he choose this without even hesitating? She continued, but William could not answer. His throat closed with emotion. The results of the exams confirmed that Liam was a perfect donor for his brother. Dr. Carter allowed him to visit Daniel one last time before the surgery, a moment that made everyone in the room hold their breath. The three brothers hugged on the hospital bed, their small bodies forming an inseparable knot of love and fear. Don't cry, Daniel, Liam whispered, wiping away the sick brother's tears. Soon you'll have a little piece of my heart beating inside you. Then we'll really be triplets. Jack couldn't let go of his brother's hands, as if his touch could somehow protect them from what was to come. His eyes alternated between Daniel, so frail in the hospital bed, and Liam trying to appear strong despite the visible fear on his face. Promise you'll come back? Jack begged, his voice breaking. Liam tried to smile, but his lips were trembling. Of course I will. Someone needs to stop you from spoiling Daniel too much when he gets better. The nurses arrived with 2 gurneys. The time for separation had come. William approached his sons, his heart torn between pride and terror. He knelt between the 2 gurneys, first kissing Daniel's forehead, then Liam's. His tears flowed freely as he whispered, "You are the bravest boys who ever existed. My sons. My little warriors." Liam raised a trembling hand to wipe away his father's tears. "Don't cry, Dad. We've always known how to take care of ourselves, remember?" said the boy without understanding the overwhelming sadness that coursed through his father's chest. Dr. Carter signaled that it was time. As the nurses began to move the gurneys, Jack ran between them, unable to choose which brother to follow. "Stay with Daniel," Liam shouted as his gurney moved away. "He needs you more now." Daniel tried to sit up on the gurney, his eyes wide with panic. "Liam, I don't want your heart if it means losing you. Please, don't do this. I don't want this surgery if it means you going to heaven. We have to stay together. The 3 of us." His voice was weak but laden with despair. The elevator doors opened and the gurneys were positioned side by side for the last time. Liam turned his face to his sick brother, trying to keep his voice steady despite the tears. "Hey, that's not what we agreed on. You're going to accept my gift and get better, understood? It's an order from the older brother." Daniel sobbed, trying to reach Liam's hand. "You're only older by 2 minutes." Liam managed to smile through the tears. "And they were the 2 most important minutes of my life." Laura, who observed the scene in silence, noticed that Liam was trembling slightly on his gurney. She approached him, adjusting his blanket with motherly gestures she had never imagined making. "You're not alone, dear ones. We'll all be waiting for you." Liam held her hand for a moment, his eyes revealing the fear he tried to hide. "Take care of Jack for me. He pretends to be strong, but he'll need someone to hug," the boy implored, but Laura shook her head. "You'll take care of each other just like we'll take care of you. We'll all be fine. We're a family now. You're strong. Keep fighting," she said, her voice profoundly sweet. The gurneys began to move in different directions. Daniel to the preparation room on the right, Liam to the left. Jack stood in the middle of the corridor, his small body trembling with contained sobs as he watched his brothers move away. William hugged him from behind, his voice choked. "They'll come back to us, son. They have to come back," he said, and Jack turned in his father's embrace, burying his face in his chest. "We've never been separated, never. And if this time, I can't live without them, I can't." The medical team stopped for a brief moment, allowing one last look between the brothers. Liam raised his hand from the gurney, making the secret gesture the three had invented on the cold nights at the church. 3 fingers raised, symbolizing their eternal union. Daniel and Jack immediately repeated the gesture, their hands trembling. "Always 3, Liam whispered. "Always together," Daniel replied weakly. Jack completed, his voice choked. "Always one heart." Dr. Carter signaled, and the gurneys resumed their movement, each following a different corridor into the surgical center. Liam kept his eyes fixed on his brothers until the very last possible second, his face taking on a serenity that contrasted with his body trembling with fear. "Doctor," he called softly when they were already far from the others. "If only one of us can survive. Save Daniel, okay?" the boy asked. The doctor squeezed his small hand. "We'll do everything to bring you both back, little warrior." In the other room, Daniel fought against the drowsiness of the pre-surgical medications, his eyes desperately searching for the brother he could no longer see. A nurse held his hand, while another prepared the anesthesia. "My brother," he mumbled, already half unconscious. "He'll be okay? Promise you'll take care of him. If you have to choose to save Liam." The nurse wiped away a discreet tear as she adjusted the drip. "We'll take very good care of both of them, dear. Now count to 10 for me." William, Laura, and Jack remained standing in the corridor, staring fixedly at the double doors that had swallowed the 2 boys. The father held the remaining son tightly, as if afraid he too might disappear at any moment. Laura intertwined her fingers with Jack's, surprising them all. "Shall we pray for them? Teach me that prayer you used to say in church?" she asked to distract the boy, and Jack nodded, his voice trembling as he began, "Our Father who art in heaven." The ancient words echoed through the empty hallway, carrying the hopes of a family that had just found each other, and now risked losing everything. The red lights above the doors of the surgical center came on, indicating that the surgeries had begun. Jack huddled between his father's and Laura's arms, his small body shaking with stifled sobs. "Now all we can do is wait, isn't it?" William kissed the top of his head, his own tears wetting his son's hair. "Yes, son, now all we can do is wait, and believe in the love that made your brother give a part of his own heart to save Daniel," he replied. The first hours of surgery dragged on like decades. Jack had counted every crack in the hallway floor, every stain on the wall, anything to keep his mind off what was happening behind those closed doors. Every now and then nurses rushed in and out, carrying blood bags or equipment, but their faces revealed nothing. "Why is it taking so long?" he whispered for the 10th time. Laura, who had not let go of his hand for a single second, replied softly, "Because they're being very careful, dear. Very careful with your brothers," she replied. William paced back and forth, stopping only when a member of the medical team appeared. His hands were shaking so much that he could barely hold the glass of water that Laura had insisted he and Jack drink. With each passing hour, his face aged visibly, the weight of the decision he had authorized weighing on his shoulders. "What if I lose them both? How will I live knowing I allowed this?" he asked with a distressed look. Jack got up from his chair, hugging his father's waist. "You didn't allow anything, Dad. Liam chose. He always chooses to protect us. You did the right thing. We have to stay together, and this is our only chance." On the 5th hour of waiting, Dr. Carter briefly appeared to provide an update. His face was tense, but his eyes carried a glimmer of hope. "The most delicate part of Liam's surgery is complete. Now we are transferring the heart tissue to Daniel," the doctor explained. Jack held his breath, his hands squeezing Laura's. "And Liam? How is he?" The doctor smiled slightly. "Your brother is incredibly strong. "He's holding up like a true warrior," said the doctor. The following hours were a blur of anxiety and silent prayers. The night had fallen and been born again, finding the family still keeping vigil. Jack had briefly fallen asleep on Laura's lap, his restless dreams full of heart monitors and endless corridors. He woke up startled, immediately searching for the doors of the surgical center. "How long has it been?" the boy asked apprehensively. William checked his watch for the 1,000th time. "Almost 12 hours, son. The doctor said it would be a long surgery." A sudden movement at the doors made everyone hold their breath. A nurse rushed out, but this time her face had a discreet smile. She whispered something to another passing nurse, and the word "success" reached Jack's attentive ears. His heart raced. "Did you hear that? She said success. Dad, Laura, did you hear?" Laura hugged the boy, trying to contain her own hope. "Let's wait for Dr. Carter, dear. He'll tell us everything." As if summoned by her thoughts, the doctor finally appeared. His face was exhausted, but his eyes shone in a different way. William fell to his knees in the middle of the corridor at the sight of him, his legs no longer able to bear the weight of the weight. "Please, doctor, please tell me my children are okay," he begged, tears streaming down his face just as they streamed down Jack's little cheeks. Dr. Carter knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "They made it, Mr. William. They both made it. It was a true miracle," said the doctor. Hours later, in the recovery ICU, 2 beds were placed side by side, defying all hospital protocols. Dr. Carter had insisted that the brothers needed to be close to recover better. Liam was the first to open his eyes, his gaze immediately searching for Daniel in the bed next to him. A large compress covered his chest, and every breath seemed an immense effort, but his lips curved into a weak smile when he saw his brother. "Hey, sleepyhead, haven't woken up yet to thank me for the present," he said, waking his brother. Daniel began to awaken at the sound of his brother's voice, his heavy eyes struggling to open. Jack, who was sitting between the 2 beds, held the brothers' hands. "Look who finally decided to join us," said Daniel in a weak voice, blinking a few times, focusing first on Jack, then on Liam. His voice came out hoarse and weak. "I can feel it. I can feel your heart beating inside me, Liam." Liam smiled wider, ignoring the pain of the movement. "Now you have no excuse not to obey me. You literally have a piece of me with you," replied the brother. William and Laura watched the scene from the door, embraced and with tears in their eyes. "It's amazing," Laura whispered, "how 3 boys who had nothing taught us the true meaning of family," she murmured, as William kissed his wife's forehead before approaching his son's beds. "They didn't have nothing, love. They always had the most precious thing in the world, love for each other." Dr. Carter came in for another checkup, smiling to see his patients awake and interacting. "I've never seen such a quick recovery. It seems love really is the best medicine," the doctor said. Liam tried to move in bed, grimacing in pain. "Doctor, when can we go home?" the boy asked. The doctor adjusted the IV before answering. "It's still going to take a little while, but you've already overcome the most difficult part. Now it's just a matter of moving forward, together." Jack carefully climbed onto the edge of Daniel's bed, being careful with the tubes and wires. "You know what I remembered? That promise we made in church, remember?" Liam and Daniel nodded weakly, and the 3 spoke together, their voices mingling. "Always 3, always together, always one heart," they murmured in unison. Laura wiped away a tear as she arranged the boys' blankets. "And now that promise is even more true," William completed, his voice choked with emotion. "Because you are not only blood brothers, you are brothers of the heart, literally." The afternoon sun streamed through the ICU windows, bathing the reunited family in a golden light. Liam and Daniel were already able to sit up in their beds, supported by pillows, while Jack continued his guardian post between them. Laura had brought games and books, and William spent every free moment with his sons, making up for the lost years. The love that began on the streets, survived abandonment, and conquered death, now had a home. And in Daniel's chest, a piece of Liam's heart beat strong, an eternal reminder that true love knows no limits, not even those of life itself. 3 months after the surgery, the doctors couldn't explain what happened. The twins' recovery surprised the entire medical team. Defying all expectations, Liam showed no limitations. Dr. Carter observed the results of the latest exams in awe. His heart had regenerated in a way never seen before, allowing him to live a completely normal life. In Daniel, the transplanted tissue adapted perfectly, as if it had always been a part of him. The mansion was now overflowing with life and joy. The three boys ran through the gardens, swam in the pool, and played ball like any child their age. Laura smiled as she watched them play, remembering how she had feared Liam would be limited. "It's a true miracle," she commented to William, "seeing Liam so strong, so full of energy. It's as if love had completely cured them both." The boys' room had become their private refuge, decorated with everything they had never had before. 3 comfortable beds, wardrobes full of new clothes, toys and books everywhere. But the most precious treasure remained the restored metal box, which now held not only the old photograph, but also new memories, the first photo of the complete family, taken when they left the hospital. William reorganized his life to be always present. Mornings were dedicated to studies. The boys proved to be brilliant students, eager to make up for lost time. Afternoons were reserved for family activities, swimming, games, strolls through the garden, or simply being together in the library, each with their own book, enjoying the peace of being united. Laura discovered a new joy in being a mother. Every night, she created a special moment before bedtime. They gathered in the boys' room to tell stories, drink hot chocolate, and share the day's events. The nightmares of the past gave way to peaceful dreams, lulled by the certainty of love and safety. Dr. Carter, on his last visit, couldn't hide his smile as he saw his former patients running and playing in the waiting room. "It's unexplainable by medicine," he admitted, "but sometimes love works miracles that science can't explain." The final exams confirmed both Liam and Daniel were completely cured, free to live a normal and fulfilling life. The family was complete and happy. The boys who had once struggled to survive on the streets now flourished in their new home. The love that had been strong enough to keep them alive in the worst circumstances now overflowed, transforming the once cold mansion into a place filled with warmth and joy. And so what began as a story of survival transformed into a tale of love and miracles. The 3 brothers, now healthy and happy, remained inseparable, no longer out of necessity, but by choice. As Daniel used to say, smiling, "We no longer need to share one heart because now we have enough love to fill thousands of them." Months later, the mansion's ballroom was unrecognizable. Laura had personally supervised every detail of the decoration for the triplets' first birthday party. Blue and gold balloons floated across the ceiling, elegantly decorated tables surrounded the dance floor, and a chocolate fountain, a special request from the boys, bubbled in the center of the buffet. It was the first time they celebrated a real birthday, and the chosen date couldn't be more significant, exactly 6 months after the surgery that changed their lives. Jack, Liam, and Daniel marveled at the final party preparations as they adjusted their identical bow ties, a special gift from Laura. "I still can't believe all this is for us," Daniel whispered, his eyes glistening as he saw the 3-tier cake, each layer decorated with a different theme representing each brother's personality: books for Jack, musical notes for Liam, and stars for Daniel. William had invited all the children from the boys' new school, as well as organizations that help children living on the streets, a requirement from the birthday boys themselves. "If we have so much now," Jack explained as he helped distribute the invitations, "we need to share with those who are still where we were." Laura cried upon hearing this, proud of the kindness her children at heart had maintained despite everything. The party began at dusk. Dr. Carter arrived early, carrying 3 identical gift packages and an emotional smile as he saw his former patients running and playing like any healthy child. The music played cheerfully as dozens of children filled the dance floor, many experiencing their first real party, just like the triplets. The most emotional moment came during the birthday song. William called for silence, and with a choked voice told the story of the 3 warriors who never gave up on each other. The candles were lit, 9 on each tier of the cake, representing the boys' years of life. Before blowing them out together, Liam held his brother's hands. "This is just the first of many birthdays we'll celebrate together." Laura had prepared a special surprise, a video showing the boys' transformation over the past 6 months. The hospital images gradually transformed into scenes of joy in the mansion, their first dives into the pool, music lessons, games in the garden. There wasn't a dry eye in the ballroom when the video ended. The party continued late into the night. The triplets made sure to give attention to every guest, especially the children from the shelter. They shared their new toys, filled plates with sweets for those too shy to serve themselves, and told their story to anyone who wanted to listen, not as a sad tale but as a story of hope. When the last child was gone, the three brothers threw themselves exhausted but happy on the living room couch. They watched the balloons dancing on the ceiling while Laura and William organized the presents. "Do you know what's the coolest thing about turning 9? Daniel asked sleepily. "That now we're sure we'll turn 10, 11 and all the others," Jack replied. Liam smiled, adding, "And the best part, we'll go through all of them together." And so what began with 3 small hearts beating alone on the cold city streets turned into a symphony of love and hope. The triplets who only had each other found not just a father, but a complete family who taught them that love can heal all wounds. Liam and Daniel, fully recovered, ran and played as if they had never faced surgeries or illness. Jack could finally relax, knowing he no longer had to bear the weight of protecting his brothers alone. Laura discovered that her heart, once closed by prejudice, could expand to embrace 3 children she never imagined having. And William learned that sometimes fate has mysterious ways of correcting its mistakes, returning to him the children he didn't even know he had. The once cold and silent mansion now overflowed with life, laughter and music, proving that a home is not made of walls and luxury, but of hearts beating together in the same rhythm of love. The 3 brothers who once slept on cardboard now had not just warm beds but also dreams and endless possibilities. And most importantly, they had each other, no longer out of survival necessity, but by choice of love. The promise made so many times on cold nights, always 3, always together, was now more than a guarantee of survival. It was the daily celebration of a love that overcame all barriers, proved stronger than any illness, and more powerful than any prejudice. A love that transformed 3 small abandoned hearts into a complete and happy family. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing exciting stories almost every day. Don't miss the next surprising narrative that is about to appear on your screen. We are immensely grateful to have you here with us. Now you can click on the links that are appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, full of valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.